All right. Well, welcome to the August 11th, 2014 work session. Work sessions are a more informal setting to update the council on business items. No votes will be taken on work session items. Tonight, there are four items on the agenda. Public comment is always or allowed. That is germane to an agenda item. If you wish to speak, you're required to fill out a public comment card and turn it into the city clerk. Public comment will be allowed for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and no more than 2 minutes per person. Public comment will be heard at the beginning of each item. Once the item is called, no other public comment cards will be accepted. So, do we have any comment cards on item number one?
We do not, sir.
All right, well, let's talk about item number one then. Will the city clerk sound the first agenda item?
First item is discussion update of Welcome to Milton City signs. Miss Michelle McIntosh Ross.
Before we start that, if I could just interject real quickly, the one public comment card we got tonight doesn't specifically look like it aligns with one of the agenda items. So
it's a general comment?
It's just a general comment, which we typically don't have at work sessions, but for the sake of the public wanting to speak with you, I think it would be appropriate.
It would be appropriate to have it now before we get
go ahead
into
and
business.
do it before we get started. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And that comment comes from Mr. Lee Duncan.
Thank you. I'm speaking to you right now
If you
on
could
behalf
please
of
state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Lee Duncan. I live at 515 Rivercrest Court in Sandy Springs, Georgia. I'm here representing the Manor Golf and Country Club. I'm speaking to you regarding the overlay district, the amendment to the overlay district that was approved back in June of this year. The overlay first came up and was affecting the manor back in 2007, 2008 range. And at that point in time, there was a myriad of discussion going on, and a lot of issues were being kicked around. But it was exempting the manor primarily due to some language that's in the preamble that states simply that the manor code, city ordinance, or code standards are perceived as being more rigid. And I understand these standards are not city code, are not part of the city documentation. However, it was adopted at that point in time and is currently in use by your staff. For instance, the arborist yields to the manor in terms of any tree matters in the community. The community is a private and gated community with limited imposition on any surrounding properties. Typical lot coverage ranges from 8,000 to 12,000 square feet, and some are approaching 15,000 square feet. What this means is that a minimum lot must range from 50,000 square feet to 80,000 square feet. When the property was designed, this was not a condition that we anticipated. At this point in time, all lots in the community are platted. There's no design work going on any new lots. To further compound this effect, easement areas are currently deducted from the base lot size computation. So you may buy a lot that's 1.5 acres. If you have easements that involve 3/4 of an acre, that's deducted, and then the lot computation is created after that. Now, this impacts not only new structures, but potentially any replacement structures that would be construed as nonconforming. So the way the ordinance is written right now, if a resident in the manor was to lose a house and they were to come back and apply, and that 20% factor was applied and they didn't meet that minimum or maximum, then that would be a nonconforming structure. It's always been our approach to work within the context of the Milton community to align ourselves out at the manor and to meet your objectives whenever possible. And that attitude continues to prevail. And we at the manor, to include myself representing the lots that are yet to be sold, and the investor that's bought those lots, as well as the HOA and anybody else that has a position in the manor, that approach continues to this day and will continue in the future. We look forward to working with you to find a mutually beneficial solution to this situation. We do not feel that the overlay accomplishes what its intended effect was at the manor. In fact, at this point in time, it creates a serious imposition for that community to continue to do business as it has in the past. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Ms. Michelle McIntosh Ross, discussion update of Welcome to Milton City Signs.
Good afternoon. Michelle McIntosh with Community Development. And just to give you an update from our last meeting, I believe it was 6 months ago, and we talked about gateway signs. Happy to say we have our first installation of the Welcome to Milton sign. It's at Highway 9 and Webb Road. Hopefully you all got a chance to see it. Okay, good. So we got that one in. We got the plantings in a couple weeks later. So the trees are fine. Mark talked to me. He said they dropped their leaves in the beginning, but they're fine. They'll be okay. Okay, so these are the proposed locations for the big signs that we had talked about. We had 9 locations. We now have 8 because we got the Highway 9 and Webb installed. We also ordered the second sign, which will be installed at the Blue Valley site, Birmingham at Cherokee County. That's already been ordered, and so that should be installed in the next 3 weeks or so. We are going to use a black fence behind. If you notice, the one at Webb 9 is a dark brown, and we felt like the black would look better at the other side, so that's the only change we're going to make with that one. Mark drove out to the Blue Valley site today, and there's an existing dogwood, and he's going to incorporate that dogwood into the planting design. So we're going to shift the sign to make it look real nice with that dogwood. It's a nice dogwood. So, okay, about the smaller signs, as you recall, we figured we'd do something around that size with 2 posts to fit the smaller sign. And here are the locations that we sort of figured. We had 16 last time I was here. I added another one, which will make it 17. I think the Crabapple Pavilion would be a good spot to put a small sign. And once we get that going this year, and so by December, we'd have the pavilion, and then we'll put a sign right there. It's close enough to the city limits, and of course, it's actually the city limit from across the street, the court house in Alpharetta. So, I mean, it's pretty close. So we could just use that for a Welcome to Milton sign and a Crabapple Pavilion sign on there. And those are the other locations. So these are some of the considerations that we talked about last time, which is we need to survey and locate the right-of-way for some of these sites in order to put a sign. We added a line item in the budget for the 2015 budget for surveys and right-of-way acquisition. Also, when GDOT is doing their work, for instance, at Highway 9 and Forsyth, they're going to be doing some survey work, so we'll use their survey information and try to put a sign at the Forsyth line. Also, we talked about when we do surveys, if we don't have enough right-of-way, then we would have to move into trying to acquire easements and so on. So those are the considerations and what we did to work those out. Any questions?
So if where there's right-of-way that we have access to now, we'll go ahead and start putting those in on the smaller signs. Everything
Right.
else is going to require the process
Yeah.
of acquiring the right-of-way.
Mm-hmm.
So that may take some
But we
time.
still need to do a survey to,
Right.
yeah.
Well, I can tell you the one on Highway 9 looks really good. so-
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, the first one is always the hardest one.
That's right.
The next, we'll start sailing from now on.
When do you think the one at Blue Valley will go in?
The next 3 weeks or so, they're already working on it. So, and it took a long time for them to build the first one because they had a lot of design issues. I had to go in several times to approve things. I said, it's the same sign,
Yeah.
just do another one.
make it.
So, so that should go in the next 3 weeks or so. Good?
That's it?
All right,
Thank you,
great.
Michelle.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. We don't have any additional public.
We do not.
All right, so would the city clerk please sound the next item?
Our next item is discussion of RZ 14-12 to amend Article 19, Crabapple Form-Based Code. Ms. Kathy Field.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. The proposed amendments for both, for the form-based codes for both of them, for both Crabapple and Deerfield, are almost identical with one additional caveat. And to lead the discussion, I'd like to ask our city attorney, if he wouldn't mind, to talk about the two issues that are identical in both of the form-based codes, and then I'll chime in with the third remaining issue, if that's all right with you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure, I'm on. Yes, so thank you, Kathy. Members of the council, with respect to the proposed amendments that are the same, with respect to both of the codes, the first one pertained to just some language that candidly needed some minor tweaking. And the reason for that was because there were some references within the code to an overlay and to some language that could be considered a little confusing. Typically, when you think of an overlay, you think that you've got a base zoning, and then the overlay sort of sets on top of that zoning, and everything that is not covered in the overlay is in fact subsumed within the zoning. Well, that's not really the way the form-based code works. The form-based code is the zoning, and so we wanted to make sure that that was not unclear in the code, and so we've done that by making just a few modifications within the text to take away any references, candidly, to overlay. The concepts just don't apply. So that's really all that is going on here. It's not a significant amendment, but it will, potentially from an administration standpoint, that can get confusing, and there could be a zoning applicant that might want to raise that against us. We don't want that. We want the code as clear as we can make it. This was caught in real time, so this is just a very modest text amendment being brought to you. The next issue that I'm going to address before I turn it back over to Kathy is equally as what I would consider minor, and that's just within the context of the TDR. We wanted to make sure, as the council I'm sure is aware, we are also and have the authority under the TDR program to sell our own transfer development rights. But to do that, it was the position of my office that a modest amendment to the definition of TDR within the code was required. And on page 36 of your packet, you will find that modification. We stripped away of the reference to relocating existing zoning rights and changed it to a method of permanently reducing development potential. That makes me much more comfortable from the standpoint of valuation. And then transferring that development potential, not zoning rights, but the development potential to areas to be more densely urbanized. Again, to the extent there was ever a challenge, we don't think there would be. We believe that makes a much nicer picture of what, in fact, the city of Milton particularly can do with respect to TDRs. So that's all from my perspective, very modest, but they make the overall ordinances better.
And then the third issue is minor but has been problematic in the past, and that relates only to the Crabapple form-based code. And that is it's a proposed amendment to delete the requirement for half-round gutters within the Crabapple form-based code. Over the past 2 years since the adoption of the ordinance, every builder has requested a warrant, or variance if you will, to this requirement. It will remain still as an option, but will not be required. Staff proposes to allow OG gutters, which are the typical type of gutter installed on homes. And as I said, this is only found in the Crabapple form-based code and is on page 27. And those three amendments are essentially what we're asking you to approve this evening as they relate to the Crabapple form-based code and also to the Deerfield form-based code.
I found it interesting that of the whole form-based code there in Crabapple, the gutters was the thing that stuck out. Obviously they're pricier. I think they look better, but was the cost?
Maintenance and cost, but no one wanted to do that. So I found myself just giving out warrants all the time for each of the building permits. So I think this will just make life easier.
Well, if we're going to vary it, consistently, we might as well address it where you don't have to
Exactly.
go through
It
that
is still
process.
allowed, but it's not required.
Yes, sir.
Question to Ken. Been in different discussions recently, mostly pertaining to a green space. And the issue of TDRs came up as regards the city having the right to sell TDRs for park property. Are we subject to a challenge on that, or do you think we have all the legal right to do that?
And actually, myself and your city manager and others have discussed that issue. We've ultimately concluded that we can do it, but that was in fact driving a little bit of this definitional change. And so let me be a little more clear. In the TDR definition, you will notice that what we are going to be stripping away from the property is not just existing zoning rights, because, for instance, a city government is not subject to its own zoning. So if we were to strip away our own zoning rights, we have not really stripped away much that is of value to the city, because we're not subject to it anyway. However, future development rights do have value. Is it possible for cities and local governments to sell property into the hands of a developer? It's uncommon, but it can happen. We have to sell it, competitively in a public auction, but it could occur. But once we do that, forget about zoning. Once we've stripped away the development rights, those have value. They could be conveyed to a third party, and we think that is defensible. And that's why this is being done. We want to be able to make that argument right there.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you, Kathy. I'll assume that no one's turned in a card in the last
They have
5
not.
minutes.
No, they have not.
Would the clerk sound the next agenda item?
Discussion of RZ 1413 to amend Article 20 Deerfield Form-Based Code. Ms. Kathy Field.
I think we've talked about both of them.
Yeah, that was lumped together in that last one.
Okay.
But both of them are the same conversation.
Right. Discussion of City of Milton budget, revenue and expenditures, capital improvement project prioritization. Mr. Chris Lagerblum.
That was one of those moments I'm standing here going, uh-oh. I don't know anything about that. And they're going to look and wonder what we know about the form-based code in Deerfield. Council, tonight is the first of probably many opportunities to work on the fiscal year 15 budget. A little bit different this year because the mayor's not here, and I do believe he really wants to be here the first time we have a fairly in-depth discussion about it. So I'd like to stay fairly high level tonight out of respect for that request and distribute the budget and then maybe talk about process and talk about some capital projects in it. The budget has been a labor of love over the last month and a half as it's come together. This was the first year, actually, that as of about 5:30 tonight, it still wasn't balanced, and we've never pushed one that close to the wire. But we're presenting tonight a budget that is balanced based upon priorities that I think you all have as a council and priorities I think we have as a city. Let me hand it out and then talk a little bit about its design and how it changed from last year, and then ask you what I'd like you to maybe consider doing as next steps. First thing I'd like to highlight is for those that were in attendance, you'll recognize that I was, in fact, in that picture that is on the cover and had been cropped out of it by somebody, so I thought that was a nice touch to start the budget process. But teaches me to be on the edge of a picture, I guess. So the budget is very similar to previous years in that you'll have summary sheets at the beginning and working through the maintenance and operating needs of the city, which are those things which keep us functioning day to day, to then moving into what we think this year is an enhanced look at capital projects. And that's where this budget really takes a change this year. Instead of it being a 5-year look, where it's a 7-year look in the budget, it's a 7-year realistic look based upon anticipated funding. The thing you will find that's going to come your direction after this budget document, we're just finishing it up right now, are the operational costs that we likely anticipate because of the capital projects. You know, you build a building, and I can build the best fire station in the world without firefighters to put in it. It's an empty building. So the capital project cost is just one side of the table, and we need to look at what it's going to cost to operate these facilities as well. I would never send you with a budget, and I was worried about this all day, that I was just going to hand you a budget and say, hey, we're going to meet on such and such date to talk about it, without you having some idea as to my thought process in how it was designed and prepared. That's what you will find is that top letter that's in there. It's a 5-page letter, and it kind of walks through step by step some of our thought process as we put this budget together. That is not the budget transmittal letter that will be included in the eventual budget. We will have the one that has all the required stuff in it that goes into a budget transmittal letter. That's simply my hoping that if you sit down in the next couple days and go through this document, you'll have some sense and some idea as to, if you spot something, why it is looking the way it looks. We obviously we had a conflict tonight. I had put out the date of August the 25th as a substitute date for the budget. The mayor's going to be in New York on the 25th, so that and it's Councilmember Longoria's 30th wedding anniversary, so we're trying not to impact that night for you if we can. But having said that, I don't know if anybody's ready to look at their calendar tonight, but I do know that the prior week, a week from now would be the 18th. We'd meet on the 18th in regular council meeting session. Wondering if everybody would be available on either that Wednesday or Thursday, 20th or 21st, at 6 o'clock. For about an hour, I would anticipate maybe an hour and a half, really in-depth dive into this document after you've had a chance to sort of thumb through it and figure out how to navigate through it. But does that night, potentially, either of those nights work for everybody?
Neither one works for me.
Neither. Okay.
What
Okay.
was the 21st and what was the other?
Is the 20th or 21st?
20th will not work. I'll be in Tallahassee.
Okay.
21st would.
Okay.
I might be a little late, but I could probably make the 21st.
But neither of them work for Matt. Okay.
They don't work for me either.
Doesn't work for you either. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and send something out that tries to aggregate some dates to see if I can find one. I really would like for everybody to be here, if possible. The budget is that important that this first workshop, because we're going to be talking so much about capital projects, there is really value in all 7 members being here. So even if it pushes out a little bit into the future, the following week, for example, from the 25th, and we schedule a workshop right before the regularly scheduled council meeting, I'd rather do that if I could get all 7 people to be here. Having said that, what I would like to offer and what I'd hope you'd take us up on is sometime between now and whenever that date is that we establish it, I'd love for you to thumb through this, read that 5-page letter, get through the budget, take a really hard look at numbers, and then schedule just a time to come in and sit and talk with Stacy and I here around a conference table, and let's just talk individually about it and any questions you have, any feedback that you want to provide, any direction changes that you think we didn't account for, something that we should have. I'd like to not lose the momentum, I guess, of this budget process, because we're going to be towards the end of September here real quick, and our ability to continue to operate will be dependent upon us having a good, sound, adopted budget. One of the questions you might ask at this point, and this just because you're keeping up with current events, is what practical effect does the litigation now against Fulton County for their establishment of the millage rate, what does that potentially do to our ability to issue tax bills or to raise any funds that would obviously be needed to deploy a budget? And the answer to that is we don't know. And that's not a good answer, but it is the answer. We don't know at this point yet because Fulton County has been directed to prepare their documents in accordance with what their commission adopted and send it to the Department of Revenue. We will not know until the Department of Revenue responds what the position will be on whether or not that litigation gets in the way. I don't want to get into their litigation, and we don't want to be a part of it, but the reality is that one of 2 things is going to happen. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and then whoever loses appeals. So, we could pretty much predict the future in that lawsuit. It just depends on who that winner is and who that loser is and who wins and loses on appeal. But, Joe, you look perplexed.
Well, I certainly understand that their setting the mill rate has an impact on, could potentially have an impact on the property values, and our mill rate, which doesn't change, is a function, or our tax revenue is a function of their assessments and our mill rate. So I'm trying to figure out how does that impact our collection of taxes?
I don't think that one really has an impact on the other. It's whether or not this digest would be certified that we could bill from. So if it's not certified that we can bill from it, then we would likely, as I told our staff the other day, it's a good thing we're in this with friends because we're all in the same boat together, all of the cities in Fulton County.
Okay, I misunderstood because I thought you said their mill rate was being called into question. I'm sorry. I understand
They
that.
adopted a mill rate, and now you've got these 6 independent people who otherwise are state legislators who have brought a lawsuit against them. So, their millage rate is changing. They believe it is, and they've been sued to block that change. That doesn't affect us, but it affects the ability of whether or not this digest will be certified.
Okay.
If it's not certified, we can't bill.
I didn't hear for some reason the digest piece of that, so I understand now.
The thing we would likely do, anticipate in the future, is if it is impacted, we'll go down the route of a temporary collection order again, which is just, from a timing perspective, it's not ideal, but it works. So that's what we know about that. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I think we're probably in better shape than most of the other cities since we do our own billing, and most of the other cities rely on Fulton County to do their billing. I think the question is, Fulton County can be a little bit vindictive at times, and there have been rumors that they weren't even going to send the stuff off to be certified based on this lawsuit, and that could definitely impact us if we didn't get the digest certified in time.
It could. Again, the good thing is we're not alone in this, and there's a lot of municipalities in Fulton County that would be equally as affected. So, we certainly will fight the fight that needs to be fought to make sure that we can do what we need to do to stay functioning and providing services.
So the
Yes,
tax
sir.
digest is not going to be certified by Fulton County until they resolve the millage rate issue?
And it's not them that has to certify it. They send it to the Department of Revenue,
Right.
who will then issue a certified digest. So there's just the question as to what document gets sent and whether or not the Department of Revenue has the guts to stamp it, so to speak, knowing that there's legislation out there that's challenging the action that the Board of Commissioners took.
So have they already sent it on to Department of Revenue?
I don't believe they have yet.
They're trying to prepare it
Okay.
to be sent.
So, anyway, we'll watch that. There will be things we have to do, I'm sure, at some point, but we'll navigate through it.
Bill, you got a question?
So just from a logical flow of things here, if the digest isn't approved and we can't bill, would that mean we'd be operating out of our reserves?
If you recall, we've had this happen to us in the third year of our operation where we were late with the digest, and yes, we would operate with our existing cash until we could get the temporary collection order. And it more looks funny when we report at the end of the fiscal year. It looks like you had a really short fiscal year and a really long dollar-wise. So it's more about how it gets booked than it is really a cash flow issue. We won't put ourselves in a place where we have a weak cash flow position. So. That's really where it affects us is in reporting.
Well, I guess it could have some impact then if it's prolonged like it was in the third year, going out to the first year. If we couldn't start billing until then, it may mean we may have to put off some of these increases in our budget or our capital projects.
We'll make, yes. I mean, we will not make foolish decisions when it comes to that. But when it happened before, we watch cash flow every day, and we'll do that again this time. So, having said that, let me highlight just real quickly, if you would all in your books, so we have a little bit of a discussion on budget tonight. If you'd all go to the CIP. On the CIP P slide, this is where you'll see some what looks to be a different document than what you were used to seeing last year. And it's because we tried to take a very strong visionary look towards capital projects out through 7 years as opposed to 5 years that we were doing, taking it even one step further where we really tried to make sure that at the end of the day that we were running a capital plan of somewhere between $6.5 million and $7.5 million. per year over the next 7 years. So it's one thing to put a bunch of needs on a piece of paper and show you that we could practically get them done in 3 years. It's another to say that the funding needed to do the things is going to really push the project out to year 7 or year 6 or whatever. So that was the look that we put against this capital plan this year. We put them all, and they're all in the, if you were to go to the executive conference room, you'd see all the projects on Post-it notes all up on the wall, and we were trying to prioritize and figure out what direction you all would think was the right priority for the projects. And now they're in a nice spreadsheet that if you want this electronically, you can really sort it by all sorts of different stuff. You can sort it by the funding requested or funding needed in a certain year. You can sort it by different departments. It now has the flexibility to really just move stuff around and see how it affects the bottom line. But you'll see that as you read through this, anything that's in the yellow column, that's the remaining funds that exist in a current account. The next line over, which is 15, those are the dollars that we believe we need to add or subtract from those particular lines in this year. And then you'll see moving out into the future how things line up. I don't need to necessarily, unless you want to, go into them item by item tonight, but I'd ask as you work through this budget, this is really where the council can really get visionary for us. I mean, we've gotten pretty good at knowing what it takes to operate the city on a day-to-day basis. We kind of know how much postage we need. We know how many pens we need. We know that stuff now. And you really won't see a whole lot of a change in the M&O. But this is really where we can get pretty visionary, and you can help me establish the projects that are priorities and where they fit. Do you have any initial questions? I recognize that this document you've now had for 4.5 seconds. And I wouldn't expect you to have detailed questions about it, which was sort of, I guess, by design, since we weren't going to have a big discussion on it tonight. But do you have any high-level questions?
I'm sorry, just one question. Obviously, we have some areas, like you said. I'm looking at the Arnold Mill and New Providence intersection at 249, 327. That's money we have budgeted for that intersection, and then for the budget requests, we have another subtract 249, 327 out of that figure. Just explain.
So what that means is that project is complete, and that was the remaining balance in the line. So the project came in $249,000 under budget, so it's just a zero out of an account of a project that's complete.
Okay, I want to understand that. Thank you.
So the net increase in capital investments for 2015 is $6.4 million, right? That's what we're saying here?
That's total.
You're saying 6,496, and then the required 3% contingency.
6,691, yeah.
That is correct.
So the zeroing out of the transfers or whatever else we were accounting for in that column, that's what the net is.
It is, and I'll take you go up to Public Safety Communications, and I can tell you what our thought process was there. We budgeted the right amount based upon that $16 million budget for the radio system. So as we start to hone in with more certainty, we just awarded a contract last week for the construction of the tower sites. We had a project budget based upon the initial thought at $1.6 million. We actually awarded the bid for $849,000. That's a great thing to do, but we then can recover 14% of that net, of that delta between those two numbers, and say we don't need that money anymore because now that became a known. So our percentage of what was paid to that contract, we believe we saved $100,000.
Okay.
And now I can point to how we saved it, which is why I'm comfortable coming to you and saying it can come out and be spent on other stuff.
Okay.
So you'll see that accounted for in here is the price for the City Hall build. You'll see the park is accounted for in here. You'll see as you work through here, we had a priority discussion with the fire department and the police department. And if you look at future growth areas and areas really of the highest demand for fire services right now where we have the gap, it's more, and we're calling it West Side here, but it's more in the area of the new roundabout, Birmingham and Providence, New Providence, which is why you'll see broken apart here fire facilities and police facilities as opposed to thinking that we're going to build the 40,000 square foot building there on Highway 9. Now, we might actually have had, based upon some population trend growth in that center part of Milton, we might actually have a more immediate need there in the center of town than we do on the Highway 9 area because of our relationship with Alpharetta and that west side, the West Side Parkway, Webbridge Road Station. So, we might still have the need for both. We're just, the fire chief is looking at growth trends and where the biggest gap is. So You'll see those two broken apart for just that purpose. A couple of the other things that we're still considering, and this would be something that we bring forward, is to, these capital budgets contemplate cash purchases of all of our vehicles. That's a position that we've worked hard to get to. We've got this ladder truck right now that is on hold in production, but it's a big expense. And so we're looking at what that looks like to whether or not it makes sense to do a cash purchase in that situation, or whether or not there's some other financing options that depreciate the costs of the unit when the bill is paid. So we'll look at a couple of those things to see if they make sense. But what's in here at this point is the most conservative thing, which just says we're going to be in the cash business of buying vehicles.
And remind me, how much is a standard, as much as you can just say standard, fire truck?
Oh yeah, I don't know that you can say standard,
Yeah.
Because
I know we have ladder trucks and the.
You can buy a fire truck for $200,000 and you can buy a fire truck for $2 million. It just depends on what you expect it to do.
This is about $4 million that we would have going toward fire trucks over a 7-year period. Is that? How many do we expect for that?
The ladder truck that we just have under contract at this point that's being built is a ladder truck that's at $1.2 million, to put you in context of price. You can get one without a ladder on it. The last ones I guess I'd defer to the chief. $450 to $5?
Yeah, they're averaging about $500,000.
So this adequately, and this not only funds though the apparatus itself, but this also funds the administration vehicles and the battalion chief vehicle and the chief's vehicle. It's all contained in this one capital line item. So it's not, this line is not just exclusive of the big trucks. It's of the fire fleet itself. And there's a backup spreadsheet that we could give you that shows how we got to these numbers and how we anticipate the vehicles depreciating so that these numbers match their replacement needs. We've got that in both the police and fire department.
And is that something you have for a lot of this in an Excel type format that you could send to us?
Yes.
Try to minimize
Or is it here
line by line
It's-
questions?
It's in the backup that's behind there. You'll see the individual project spreadsheets. Of course, these are printed Excel spreadsheets. So if you want the electronic version where you can highlight over the cell and you can see the note, we can certainly provide that to you. I had 2 requests for paper and 1 request for electronic, so I erred on the side of caution and brought everybody paper on the first night. But this is also available very easy.
I'd appreciate an electronic copy myself.
We'll just push it out. We'll push it out to everybody so you can hover and read the comments in each cell. Do what?
So,
Right. So I guess at this point, really what the next steps are is read the 5-page letter, please, just so you understand the thought process. If you can find an opportunity in the next week or so to schedule some time to come in and sit and chat with Stacy and I. If I know that you're coming with specific questions that I need to have department heads at that meeting, I certainly can. So if you want to load me up with questions ahead of time, great. If you want to just show up, that's fine too. And then I'm going to try to work on a date that makes sense for us to get together. If I were to ask you to look out maybe on your calendar the week after, we've already said the 25th doesn't work because of the mayor being in New York. Do any of those, are you traveling that week? So is it easier if I keep this on a Monday?
it is.
Okay.
And I don't mind the 25th. I understand the mayor's not going to be there, but if we have to go to a backup plan, that would be my best date. But at the 25th and 26th, I'm in town.
Okay.
I'm just extending my anniversary to a extended vacation later on in the
We
week.
might just be, it might just be one of those things where, with the best of intentions, we simply just have to move forward.
And I have no problem meeting on weekends if we had to do that.
Yeah, I threw the 23rd of Saturday to the mayor, and he said it's a last resort. But maybe I do. Maybe we are to a last resort. So does everybody look at the 23rd, which is a Saturday, and be willing to meet for
I'm
10
good.
o'clock?
It's fine with me.
Okay.
Yep. Do it.
So maybe that's the. Maybe I'll text him back and say, well, it was a last resort. That's
what happens when you're not here.
That's what happens when you're not here. So, okay, so I'll text and call him here in just a little bit when his work engagement is done tonight, and just really see if we can do the 23rd. And I'm good with that. And sometimes a morning budget talk is just for a defined purpose. Shoot, we might engage a part of the community that wants to come see what we're doing that we don't get during the week. So maybe there's that benefit as well.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it in the executive conference room, so it's more of an informal, real work session type discussion rather than,
I wouldn't mind doing it there if you're okay with that, because I got walls to write on and, board to use and all
I
that
would
kind of good
rather-
stuff. That's a better
More
room.
productive.
It's a better room to use in putting it together. It probably is a better room to use in discussing it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so 23rd, executive conference room. I will, is 10 o'clock's good unless you hear otherwise? I won't need a city attorney, I don't think, for that. We still meet the advertising requirements for that city, right? Okay.
We would not be able to stream live from.
Good point. Okay, so we wouldn't be able to stream live if we did that. Could we tape it and have it up?
We could post it up later.
We could post it up later? Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so that would be great if you take a look at it. I'll stay flexible this week, next week, if you want to try to get in, stay late, whatever it takes. This is potentially one of the biggest things we do every year is put this budget together because it really gives us our yearly plan. So we'll be as accommodating as we need to be. Matt?
It just looks like, too, I just was looking at the balances at the end. It seems like we're staying pretty consistent as far as overall expenditures. We're just shifting where their focus is year over year. So, and we're just, trying to keep it that way. I appreciate that. I thought that was a good thing.
We're doing that, and we also heard, I believe, was some good direction from the council in your interpretation of our fund balance and how that fund balance policy is interpreted. So we have this budget document now where we are where we used up some of the fund balance on capital projects with the authority that we had with our current fund balance policy. It didn't let us go as low as 18% according to our policy. We would have to change it if we wanted to go that low. But we did definitely take some of those accumulated funds and put them towards capital projects so that the projects could happen quicker. Okay. Good deal. Well, thank you for that. I want to bring up one other item tonight that's not on the agenda, but it's just because I need feedback from you. And I'll send it with you. And this is with respect to the transfer facility that is up on our border with Forsyth County. I brought a example of a resolution tonight for you to take home with you and to read. It's a resolution that will be coming forward. Something will be coming forward in close to this, I think, next Monday night for your consideration whether or not we take a position on that facility and then whether or not we transmit that position to Forsyth County. Recognizing that any time that we either support or particularly when we oppose something that another government does, there's always a tone that goes along with that. And we saw the tone when, and I don't think it was on purpose, but we saw the tone when Alpharetta went to try to talk to Forsyth County about annexing areas in Forsyth County versus Fulton County. And I'm mindful of the fact that that simple act has now still had a damaged relationship, believe it or not, between the two governments. So we want to be appropriately forceful, but I think we also want to be appropriately professional. So I'm interested in your take on tone of a resolution. You don't have to tell me whether or not you support it. You might very well vote against it, and most of you might, and we just then don't send anything. But if we were to approve something, I wanted to at least have a baseline to start from, so you could give me feedback. If you think, Chris, I think you got it. I think you said what we needed to say, or you say, whoa, that's being too adversarial. Let's tone it back a little bit. I'd love that feedback before I publish something, because even though you haven't voted on it or seen it, once I publish it, it's out there, and I don't want to. I don't want to damage a relationship if we don't have to. I want a position to be clear, but I want to make sure that we do it very thoughtful when we start to talk with Forsyth. So I'll give you one of these, and you can just take it with you. So simple one page, and if you have feedback, I'd appreciate that.
Be great.
Having said that, I think that's all I've got for tonight. For y'all, unless you have any questions of me.
Anybody else? Nothing? That's all?
Good deal. Thanks, sir.
All right, thank you.